Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of It's Not Luck with your host Nicola Charlotte, mindset coach and business strategist for female founders, corporate employees, women with big ambitions who want to grow and reach their potential feeling at their best. I am really looking forward to this episode. It's going to be a juicy one in the sense of learning from one of the most aspirational, kind of powerful, but also relatable business owners that I follow. Grace Beverley, 27 years old, 2 multi-million pound businesses, TALA and Shreddy, a best-selling author, podcast host, and all around what seems to be like a great gal. I've actually been following Grace for honestly over 10 years. I used to watch her YouTube videos when she was at university and then when she was in her final year at Oxford, and would watch her videos of her studying and coming up with her then first business, I believe. I think it was actually, maybe it was her second. I think her first one were her exercise bands. And then she started with Shreddy. And her vlogs were all about how she was kind of coming up with the concept for Shreddy and growing what was then a very small business alongside studying for her final exams at Oxford in her university room, and just watching her feeling, like she was someone that I could relate to. I was obviously not anywhere near starting my business then. I had no idea that I was even going to be setting up a business, but it's amazing to think that I used to watch her before she had a big audience, before she is, in this phase of her life now, just when she was kind of like a normal, I mean, she's still normal, but like a relatable, everyday kind of gal at university. And it's been fascinating and incredibly inspiring, motivating to see someone just be so committed and focused to their goal, their vision, and to see what incredible success she has created in a very short space of time. So I thought today we're going to use Grace Beverley as a anchor for some lessons and learnings of her journey, but also looking into the ambition trap, the other side of success that we don't speak about as much, things like the burnout, the strategy, and redefining success. Yes, of course, those are common themes. They're themes that I speak about a lot, but it's very easy to focus on the glitz, the glamour, the milestones, the numbers that Grace has achieved, rightly so, in her businesses. But she's very open and honest about some of the kind of shadow sides of success that she has experienced, which is what I thought we could follow along with in this episode, and what I wanted to use as kind of learnings for fellow female founders out there who are in that kind of growth scale phase, and look at, the biggest story that we often miss, the ambition trap, where ambition looks good on paper, on the outside, but inevitably can lead to burnout, disconnection, chasing the wrong goals if we're not aware or if we don't have boundaries in place. So this episode is about what we get wrong with success, why strategy isn't the whole answer, and what Grace Beverley's story can teach us about doing it differently. So thinking of YouTube, talking of YouTube, hello if you're watching on YouTube, and if you are audio listener, remember that you can join the conversation on YouTube as well. And it's been an exciting journey actually for me on my YouTube. It's, as I said at the beginning, I am a YouTube gal. Like, I watch YouTube more than Netflix, more than Amazon Prime, more than normal TV. I can't remember the last time I watched regular television. And so it's been really cool to feel like I've been a part of her journey from day one. And that's where I think she has really, really nailed her success, is like continuing to nurture her community, continuing to give back to the community of kind of fans and followers that she's had from very early days. Because there are a couple of other YouTubers that I've followed, which, fair enough, they have started their career on YouTube. That's where they've grown their audience. And then they've gone on to do like brand partnerships or have their own like fashion like labels or lines within bigger fashion brands. They've set up like product-based businesses, and that has become really successful, that then they have stepped away from YouTube. And I always remember thinking, like, it's a bit of a shame because it's because of their community on YouTube that they have had these opportunities to set up a product-based business, to have a very, very successful line within a big fashion brand, that to then leave behind your YouTube family always was a bit like, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of like, fair enough, they're moving on to other things, but equally, don't forget the people that have helped you get there. And that's what I think Grace does so incredibly well, is she maintains that sense of community. You know, yes, she stopped posting on YouTube for a while. You know, she doesn't have much time running two multi-million-dollar companies, but she's back posting more now. And I think she recognized that actually there was so much importance in maintaining that connection and community there. So anyway, let's dive in with looking into the ambition trap first. So this is the idea that ambition equals constant hustle, constant growth, constant doing. We glorify busyness and view rest as lazy. And this is actually something that I spoke about coincidentally on my newsletter that went out this week. I'll leave the link to sign up to my newsletter in the description box if you want to join. But I spoke briefly about this idea of toxic productivity. And it's something that I came across myself a couple of years ago. And when I discovered it, I was like, oh my goodness, I feel seen. This is me. And I got the definition up for the sake of talking about it today. So toxic productivity can be described as the uncontrollable need to feel productive at all times, at all costs, and can become harmful to your mental and physical health. That was a definition in Forbes. And that was me. You know, I couldn't sit still. I felt this constant need to be doing more, sending more emails, creating more content, doing more nurturing, doing more outreach, come up with new ideas. And I think that is hard as business owners, as solopreneurs, because there is always things to do. And of course, well, I'd say of course, I'm sure 95% of business owners love what they do and are so passionate about their work. So the idea of doing it more is like a good thing. But that's when burnout comes into fruition. That's when we become fatigued creatively. That's when we feel disconnected because we just operate on this like autopilot way of being. And so for women, whether you're high achieving in your corporate job or whether you're running a business, it's this idea that if I don't look successful, I must not be successful. So we try and replicate or represent success on paper by doing loads, by being seen in loads of environments, by always posting, being visible, because that's what we feel will then lead to success. And this is that ambition trap that's very hard to get out of, because the more you do, the more you fill your time. As soon as you kind of take your foot off the pedal, you then feel a bit lost and confused and then fill that time with doing more. So it's this trap that we get into. And I did a little bit of research on this ambition trap and this concept of always needing to be busy and doing more and how it links to burnout. And there was a work report released by Deloitte in 2023 that said 53% of Gen Z women report feeling burnt out. That's over 0.5% of Gen Z women. And 46% said that their mental health had worsened in the last year despite seeing career progress. And I thought that was so interesting because ultimately people are working hard in order to progress in their career, to earn more money, to have more responsibility, to manage a team, to take on bigger, greater opportunities. Yet when that happens, people's mental health decline. So it's like, hang on a minute, what are we doing that for? We're doing it because we feel like that's what's going to help us feel more successful, happier, more fulfilled. Yet almost 50% said that actually their mental health had declined in that process. So the lesson here really is recognizing that a lot of external wins often are hiding internal struggles. This idea that we look great on paper, but behind the scenes, things are chaotic, we're unfulfilled, we're disconnected, we're feeling burnt out. This is the ambition trap. And it's what no one's talking about enough. Yet I think Grace articulates well and has done well in her podcast, in her book, which is what we're going to dive into today. 3 lessons from Grace Beverley and her learnings from building multi-million-dollar companies at the detriment of her mental health or her kind of physical health, relationships, etc. So lesson number 1, branding isn't just aesthetic, it's identity work. And by the way, this is relevant regardless of what industry you're in, whether you're running a business, working corporate, have a multi-hyphenate career. This is completely relevant. So if we look at her brand TALA, her activewear brand, she was adamant from day one that this wasn't just going to be another activewear brand. We all know it's a very saturated market, and she didn't come from another big brand. You know, she wasn't at the she didn't have the benefits of, say, a Kardashian, where they can launch a brand pretty much in any market and ultimately see success. She wanted it to be a mission-first business, a values-led company rooted in her beliefs of sustainability, inclusivity, and transparency. That was the foundations for TALA, and those still very much are, from what I can see, from what I've heard, from the research that I've done. And she then leveraged her personal identity and values to help create differentiation. Because ultimately, in something like an activewear brand, same with, say, a drinks brand or a healthy food brand or anything that's like available everywhere and a lot of, she didn't want to just create shiny branding or like Gen Z favorable branding. It was about alignment with her values, her identity, and then creating differentiation as a result of that. Because there is no other Grace Beverley. In the same way that there is no other Nicola Charlotte, there is no other you. There are hundreds and thousands of other business strategists, mindset coaches. What makes me different is my identity, my branding, the way that I communicate my values. One of my biggest values is freedom. People know me for that. I was running a workshop the other day with a guest expert within the Expander Club, and she said, Nicola, I know that you are all about freedom. She knew that because she followed me, because I speak about it a lot. So Grace said I think it was from her book, this quote came from, she didn't want to create another brand for the sake of it. She wanted to fill a gap that aligned with what she cared about. And that's probably why you set up your business if you're a business owner, is because there was something that you cared about. You knew you had skill within that, and you put your own touch on it to make it unique. And maybe if you're not seeing the success or the kind of flow or consistency with sales as you would hope, is that because you're lacking strong brand identity or strong brand values? What do you want your work to mean, not just look like? And when you can communicate that alongside demonstrating your expertise, that's when we really see success. So that lesson is a really powerful one. It's remembering that the aesthetics of your brand, and this could be your personal brand if you're working in corporate, or like the sort of physical brand if you have a business. It's more than just the aesthetics. It's about your identity, what you want to be known for, the values that you want to ensure are kind of deep rooted in everything that you do. Okay, lesson number 2. She built fast, but paused, reflected, and restructured. Now, building fast isn't for everyone. I don't necessarily think speed is the metric of success. For me, my business is very much a long-term thing. I have seen relative speed with my success in the grand scheme of things in terms of profitability and hitting 6 figures and things like that. But in my mind, it's a marathon, not a sprint. However, Grace has seen fast growth, given that she's now running multiple multi-million-pound companies, and she's only 27, which is wild. And she started launching brands way back when. So I believe the first brand was when she was at university, and these were in the kind of health space with like her fitness brands and then Shreddy. But she is very open about the fact that she burnt out because she was trying to do it all. You know, studying at Oxford is a full job in itself, let alone trying to launch and then successfully run companies. And she's spoken about this cost of constant productivity and how she had to unlearn equating output with self-worth. And that's something that I'm sure is going to resonate a lot. You know, I used to believe that productivity meant doing and that resting was lazy. And even though I envied those who had like a slower pace of life and who were having, afternoons off and never working on the weekends, like in my mind, I was like, but how? I just had this need to always be doing more. And as a result, I would be more successful. Now, I'm sure some of my success did come from the fact that I did put in a lot of hours and did make a lot of sacrifice, but it was at the detriment of my mental health and also things like my relationships, because I didn't have energy left over at the end of the day or on the weekends to put into friendships and relationships. So from her book, Working Hard or Hardly Working, she says we confuse productivity with being busy. But being busy is not a badge of honor, it's a warning sign. And I really liked how she phrased this, because we often think that if we're busy, that must mean that things are going well. Because people always say, oh, I'm so busy, which suggests that they're in demand, that they are needed, that they have an expertise. But actually we can fill our time with tasks that are not moving the needle forward, which are not contributing to that bigger goal that we're wanting to work towards. So that could look like things including tweaking your website, or updating your logo, or coming up with new offer ideas, or scrolling through job applications but never actually applying for them. So this is when we want to ask ourselves, like, is your time being spent on productive tasks that are getting you closer to your goal? If so, great. If actually you're filling your time with a lot of things that are just like filling time for time's sake, then let's have a look at those and start to let go of some of them. But also, how are you feeling along that process? And what Grace did is she implemented systems, not just for efficiency, but for her well-being. So I know that I actually haven't downloaded it, although one of my clients was telling me about it the other day. She uses her productivity planner, where she's created this system, which I believe is digital and physical, where you can essentially plan out your week and your months in a way that helps you stay productive, but also takes time for rest, for balance, for habits. Time blocking, I know she's a big fan of, and little things like she has her email blocks. So she'll have an hour a day, let's say, where she gets back to emails and tasks that require her sign off and approvals, but she's not flitting in and out of her inbox. So that's an example of a system which helps her to be efficient, but also helps to manage her well-being. So pausing and reflecting is strategic, it's fundamental, it's allowing yourself to breathe, to step away whilst you're in this kind of growth building phase, whether that's in your career or with your business. So think about your ambition, think about what it is that you're working towards. By all means, stay ambitious, but do it in a way that is not going to harm or not going to make you feel burnt out, flat out, disconnected. Slowing down doesn't mean that you're falling behind, because ultimately we're all on our own lanes. We're all in our own kind of race, as it were. If anything, slowing down is beneficial because it means that you are staying aligned and you're aware of your moves that you're making. So in the long run, you're going to be the one that's going to be further ahead, because rushing and sprinting is kind of creating room for error and injury. Okay, lesson number 3. Grace is a big challenger when it comes to hustle culture, but she's still deeply driven. There is a world, absolutely, where we are super driven, super ambitious, super determined without the hustle. But there will, of course, be periods of time when we do have to work extra hours, where we do have to say no to social plans, because if you're in like that growth scaling mode, especially if you're, looking to build like a big multi-million-dollar company, then of course there's going to be an element of hustle, but hustle shouldn't be the default. It shouldn't be the foundation. It shouldn't be the norm. And Grace is very vocal about critiquing this toxic productivity culture, while still being very vocal about her ambition to conquer America and to have a, number one chart ranking podcast, which I'm pretty sure she already does have. And she said in multiple interviews that she wants to build big things. And she's currently building an AI talent agency, I think. So once again, another massive business to take on. but she's mindful of her mental health because of the learnings that she's had in the past. She said in an interview with Stephen Bartlett on the Diary of a CEO, "I'm deeply ambitious, but I had to learn how to work in a way that doesn't destroy me." And it's a learning curve, right? You know, she's not done this before. She's learned from her number of years in being in business, and she's sharing these learnings with her community. And they're things that you're able to share with your community, with your friends, with your network. What hasn't worked well in the past? What mistakes do you now realize, looking back on, actually were having an impact on your mental health? Things for me were this belief that the more time spent at my desk, the more clients I would bring in. The more time I was working on my laptop, the greater chance of sales. I have learned that that is simply not the case. People resonate and respond well to my energy, my broader lifestyle, my values, which I'm able to show by being out and about, connecting with people, having conversations in person. That doesn't come from me sitting at my desk behind my laptop hiding away. Another lesson I learned, which sort of links to this idea of hustle culture, is that I had to save everything. I was hustling to make money, only to put that money into savings and not allowing myself to spend it or reinvest it on the belief that that's where it was safest. But actually, that wasn't the case, because I was neglecting myself of joy, of everyday luxuries that made me feel happy, of things that made me, you know, that I looked forward to each day or each week, like going out and buying a lovely coffee from a local coffee shop, or matcha from a local, farmer's market, whatever it was, or going to get my nails done every now and then. Like, I wouldn't allow myself to do those things because I thought I should save my money. But actually, those things are so much more than the act of getting a coffee. It was connection, it was conversations, it was fresh air, it was creativity. So those little things that can kind of creep in without realizing are things for you to reflect on. So where are you still hustling for external validation? And what would it look like to let that go? Imagine a world where that hustle didn't exist. How would it feel? What would it open up more time for? As Grace has done, she's refined productivity from do more, prove more, to do what matters most in a way that's sustainable. So where are there things that you're doing in your life, in your career, that you're kind of doing to prove to someone else, to gain that validation, but actually isn't making you feel good? And how can you then sort of redirect your energy and focus to what actually matters most to me, and how can I do more of that? So that's where redefining and rethinking success comes into, because success is so much more than numbers, metrics, money. Success that feels good is rooted in confidence, boundaries, self-trust, fulfillment, spaciousness. Something that I speak about a lot with my clients and help them to achieve is, how can we grow the revenue that you're generating on your business whilst also creating more spaciousness? Because I believe in a world where we have freedom and financial fulfillment, not one or the other. Real success is that quiet success, I believe. It's how you feel on a random Tuesday afternoon, not just how you feel after a big launch once per quarter. Do you know what I mean? So what does true success mean to you? How do you want to feel? I always think that's a really good question. Is success feeling confident, steady, stable, financially secure? Depending on what comes up for you, that's when we get to rewrite those rules. So actually, if success is having every Tuesday off, amazing. What do you need to change in your day-to-day to achieve that? If success is being able to fly business class whenever you travel because you want to enjoy the experience and have extra leg room and get treated like a VIP, amazing. What do you need to do that? It's not going to be working overtime to earn extra money. It might be that you need to change your roles, ask for a pay rise, set firmer boundaries. More money is available with the existing amount of work that you're doing. It's not about doing more. It's about doing less, but doing less better, which is something that I keep coming back to at the moment. So it just feels very relevant. So Coming back to the essence of this podcast, it's not luck. Success isn't luck. As we can see from Grace's story, she's got to where she is through relentless hard work, but also a very clear vision, determination, learning, redefining, restructuring processes, implementing systems that help with efficiency and that also support her mental health. So what are you measuring success by right now? Is it yours or is it someone else's? And it's hard, this, because there's so much noise out there of what success looks like and what you need to do to be successful and what you should be aiming for if you want to be successful and what a successful salary is. It's very hard to get rid of that noise when we're surrounded the whole time by colleagues or parents or caregivers or people on the news, but it all comes down to introspection and really getting clear on your values and what is important for you and how you can measure your success. So that's something that I'd really encourage you to do, is get really clear, be really intentional, and do a little audit of your mindset. Like, am I chasing after someone else's definition of success? If I were to get that, how would I feel? Does that excite me? Does it light me up? Does that motivate me to keep wanting to move forward? Grace's journey isn't about being perfect. It's about being intentional and learning and recognizing that we can fall into unsupportive habits, which actually in the long run are only going to leave us falling behind. And it reminds us that we can be ambitious and boundaried. Boundaries are something that I think I will forever talk about. And there can be as small as boundaries around your phone time, your screen time, boundaries with your own energy and your morning routines. Like, I completely appreciate if you have children or you're looking after someone or you're in a situation where actually you can't put yourself first, that boundaries around your time can feel hard. But I would like to think there's still 5 minutes that we can take for ourselves before we start our day. It might mean getting up slightly earlier, but if it's those 5 minutes that are going to help you align and center for the day ahead, that's an example of a powerful boundary. And a reminder that we can be driven and rested. Resting isn't lazy. Slowing down doesn't mean we're falling behind. Being driven is an identity, but it's also a choice. And we can choose to be strategic and aligned. We can choose to be driven and rested. Those happen with boundaries. Those happen with awareness. Those happen with regular reflection on how am I feeling? What do I need? Where's my energy at? What support do I need to reach out for? So what version of success have you been chasing? And is it really yours? And the version of success you're aiming for, what's it going to require for you to get there? I hope that you found these insights and these lessons from Grace Beverley inspiring and helpful. I really enjoyed putting this conversation together. As I say, I think Grace is an absolute powerhouse. It's incredible what she's achieved at such a young age, especially because she built one of these businesses whilst at University at Oxford studying, for her finals. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. What have you learned from someone that you follow or a business owner that you admire? Or maybe it's just someone in your network that you really feel, inspired by. I'd love for you to let me know. Either drop it below if you're watching on YouTube or feel free to send me a DM over on Instagram at Nicola Charlotte Coaching. Make sure that you're subscribed to the podcast so you don't miss future episodes, and feel free to share this conversation on with someone else who maybe is on that road to burnout because of their ambition. And you can send this to them as a gentle reminder that we can still achieve incredible things whilst also resting, whilst also taking time off, whilst also enjoying the process too. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will catch you in next week's episode.